So welcome everybody. The clock has struck 1 o'clock here in Denmark, and we're now ready to kick off our webinar. I'm guessing in the next couple of minutes people will still be joining, but we'll just do a slow start on the agenda. So it's a webinar that we've chosen to call Fighting Alert Fatigue with Seculyze, and it's for companies that use Microsoft Sentinel. So that's what we do. Seculyze is a software as a service, which is a Sentinel, Microsoft Sentinel add-on. So my name is Alex, and I'm the CEO of Seculyze, and I will be one of your hosts today. And the other one is Kristian, sitting across from me.
Yeah, and I'm the CPO of Seculyze. So I run the product, the software product that we're going to show today and utilize, showing our different cases. So we're excited to show what we have for you guys.
And Kristian is sort of our tech Jedi, and I'm probably more the commercial Jedi, or the one that one of my key things that I use time on is actually entrepreneurship. I think that's pretty fun to do with or to work with. But so that's what we're going to talk about today, and we have an agenda lined up for you. The idea is actually to look into how can you utilize Microsoft Sentinel in another way to avoid the burnout that we see, not necessarily due to Sentinel. That is not the thing, but there's just a lot of alert fatigue out there, and that's because of the different geopolitical things that we're seeing, and the immense increase in cyber attacks that I'm sure you all have your own statistics that you follow, but at least it's large. So that's sort of what we'll get out. We'll just set the context. It's a brief introduction to what is the software, but then we're actually going to dig into three very concrete cases on how can you remove or work with this alert fatigue. And one of the things is that we've seen one of our customers being able to auto-close 80% of their false positive or their alerts, which were false positives. And that's one of the things we'll dig into. We'll tell you more about that or further about that a little bit later. We're a couple of people attending. That's very nice. Thank you very much for joining.
Thanks so much, guys.
If you have any questions, you're welcome just to raise your hand or just speak up. But there's also a Q&A set up here, which you can use. Just punch in questions, and then either Kristian and I will answer them. And we'll also have time for questions at the end. We probably won't be using the full time, so there will be a question and answers session at the end if you have any that you haven't been able to ask during the presentation. So that's it. And then if there's no questions, as those of you who know me, if you don't have time for that, we'll do a dad joke battle, and I'll just start off saying what do you call a deer that cannot see? It's called no idea. So the thing is about dad jokes, they have to be corny, and that's sort of what's the next expectation if we don't, if we have a little bit of time, surplus time when we're done. Yeah. So this is the agenda for today, for the next 40-45 minutes or so. So we'll briefly talk about the why behind Seculyze. What is it we're doing? Why is it we're doing it? Our starting point, and maybe also we have a tagline that we'd like to explain a little bit. Then we'll talk a little bit about why are we here? What is the alert fatigue thing? What are we seeing out there? What are the different numbers we're seeing, statistics out there? Then we'll just briefly talk about what is it our features are in the software, because that sort of brings the context of the three real-world cases of something about increased coverage, something about auto-closing false positives, and something about sleeping well at night. So we'll dig into them, and then we'll do a next step at the end, like how can we move on from here. So the 3 real-world cases will be done by Kristian. He'll talk with them, and then you'll show how they actually worked in the system to optimize these things. So that's it. I hope that's okay with you, and that's what we've started up with. So the first thing on the agenda is why are we here, or the story behind us, the security precision engineering. Why was we started, Kristian?
Yeah, why was it we started? No. So I mean, I've been a consultant for many years within the cybersecurity space, and specifically blue teaming. Worked with like many different SIEMs, and then Sentinel came along. The last job I had within, like, let's say, real cybersecurity, and we kind of saw the light in there of the tool. It was a little bit different than the other SIEMs. It was like cloud native. There was APIs for everything. Most of the stuff was normalized, so you could easily kind of work software into it. Whereas you have some of the other SIEMs like Splunk, which is a little bit harder. You can put it in indexes as you want. But the thing happened that we adopted Sentinel a lot, and we got invited to some of these like closed Microsoft meetings with some of the product owners for the different Defender products, right? And they kind of really liked what we were doing at that point. Like, we were doing detections that were not in Sentinel at that point. Like, I know it's there now, but let's say adding a global administrator was not out of the box in the beginning. And stuff in the EDR as well, like if you were disabling EDR detections, stuff like that. So that was quite cool. And then what happened is we adopted Sentinel more and more, and I was doing the same thing again and again. And those of you who have been sitting with Sentinel probably can allude to this a little bit as well, like making sure the data is coming in correctly. If there's any new data that, Microsoft comes with the preview features, you need to enable that. The same goes for the alert rules. I mean, you need to enable that. And any new attack surfaces that comes in, like I know Graph is a big thing these days, you need to enable that. That's a new log sort from Microsoft as well. And then actually tuning it, which is kind of a static approach. And this is also one of the things we're going to talk about today. How at least our take on how we do that differently. And then, of course, you need to go and maintain that again because new content comes out, etc., etc. So yeah, we decided to build a software on top of all of this, and this is why we're also sitting here today to showcase you guys what we've done with this.
So where it all started was that we tried to take Kristian's brain and put it into software. We think that's been somewhat successful for that. He's still sitting there, but we've actually managed to take some of the value and the recommendations and the consultancy and put into our software, and then we build on top of that. So you'll also see that. But sort of, so that's sort of the why are we here? What was the starting point? So we worked around this a lot. So if you want to put us on a shelf, what kind of shelf are we on? Are we a SIEM, or are we EDR, or are we a antivirus tool, whatever? Sometimes it's nice to put things on shelves just to get a notion of where you are. So the shelf we're putting on is to the tagline Precision Security Engineering. So where we are is the security engineering department. So it could be like if you would have a SOC, like Security Operations Center, like a SOC support tool, or a SOC decision tool, MDR decision tool, MDR support tool. So that's where we are. The idea of having a security operations center that you want to improve on an ongoing basis, like continuous service improvement. So that engineering idea, that's where we are. And that's what we call ourselves security engineering, and we do precision because we think we're able to home in on the actual issues that people are witnessing. So that leads us on to the next thing. Why is it we're here? Today, and I'm guessing some of this, of course, to see what the people from Seculyze are doing, but maybe also tapping into the issue that we're seeing around alert fatigue. So that's sort of why we're here today. So Gelman has done some research on this SOC area, the Security Operations Center, and found that especially the analysts, they're faced with an overwhelming amount of alerts, and especially false positives And why do that? Well, Gilman, he sort of postulates, or not, well, he concludes that it's due to imprecise sensors and insufficient alert handling systems. So that's what we want to do, and that's what we want to change. That's why we're here. And we put in a couple of numbers, and they're linked below. So we'll send out the presentation afterwards. Then you can just see them yourself. But a couple of numbers. So the 27% there from a IDC, which is sort of like Gartner benchmarking firm. They say that they've looked into the SOC, and they say 27% of the alerts go ignored. That means they're never looked at. And this is, of course, an average. There are some that are better. There's also some that are worse. But that means you don't have to be a rocket scientist to hack. You just need to be able to count to 4, because at some point in time you reach a company where the defenses are so low you can just jump on the other side and get a successful hack in there. In the same report IDC made, they also looked into the SOC, like how efficient are they, and in average it takes 32 minutes to evaluate a false positive alert. And a fun story, just, you don't have to raise your hand or anything, but just, do you think the time is longer for a non-false or a true positive, or lower? You would assume it's more tedious and it's more work, right? But it's actually lower. The average for handling a false or a true positive is only 30 minutes. So, but if you're talking to this 32 minutes, it means we have a lot of potential for efficient or making this SOC more efficient. And the last thing I'd like to add to as well is this is not ISC, but that's Forrester, which is like Gartner wannabe as well. In the report Old Habits Die, where they look at these SOC analysts, which are just working really hard, and they're doing a wonderful job. They're really the first line and sometimes the second line of defense, so they're wonderful. But they're also way too busy to work with prevention. So they're too busy responding to work with prevention, and that's what we want to change. We want to change this analyst burnout because it's real. Alert fatigue is real, and that's what we want to change. So we know also that that in the same report from Forrester, that 96% of the security leaders say that AI tools should improve efficiency, and that's sort of the entry to our next part, because the AI adoption in security operations is what we're preventing or providing here. Yeah. So leading on to the next is sort of our, so that's sort of the pain point why we're here, right? The next is, so what do we do? Well, in essence, if we take it up in the very big helicopter, we decrease the risk of cyber attack. And how do we do that? Well, we remove or tune out irrelevant alerts, and we prioritize the remainder. That's sort of the essence of our value proposition. So that's why we're here. That's what we do. And then just before we move into to how we do it, and or not how we do it, but Kristian will take over and show the 3 cases. And I'd like to just show just briefly overview of what is it we're creating of software and how we're working. So this is how the software looks. It's a dashboard. That's what you see, and then we have 3 overall features. First feature is calibrate. That's the Kristian's brain transformed into software. So we look continuously on whether you have the right alert rules, the right log sources, and the right configuration set up. So we sort of tap into this thing, well, you need to enable some alert rules, which are nice, but you also need to disable some alert rules that just make noise. So it's sort of the consultant coming out and setting the system up or onboarding the customer or you on Sentinel, saying there are some things you need to enable, there are some things you definitely need to not to enable. So we create this what we would call secure score for Microsoft Sentinel, which we call calibration score, saying how well is the system set up. So that's the first starting point, our first feature we call calibrate. Then we move into what we call tune, which is a machine learning algorithm. So what we've done is we've transformed these alerts into a vector, and we look into it's like a basic classification machine learning algorithm, feed-forward algorithm, where we put them into 3 boxes, see how similar they are, a false positive box, a undetermined box, and a true positive box. So now we can start working with this flow of alerts, saying, the false positive we want to remove. The true positives, they're alerts you've had before. They're actually attacks, so you probably look at them as one of the first because you're being attacked again. And then we have the undetermined category. And the undetermined category makes us move into the next feature called enrich. So we have 4 open source and a closed source threat intelligence source, which we combine into a single score, saying, these alerts which have threat intelligence would have a risk score of either high, medium, low. So now we can start prioritizing our effort in the SOC, saying, what you've had as an attack first is something you start with, and then high risk, medium risk, and low risk. And just to provide a stupid example, if you look into Microsoft Sentinel, the brute force alert, you're being brute forced on an account, is always medium. I mean, always medium. And our argument would be that, well, sometimes it's medium, sometimes it might be low, but sometimes it's high. So if by chance one of these IP addresses that are trying to brute force you is a known Russian IP address, you should probably prioritize a little bit higher than if it's not. So what we're trying to do here is we're trying to look into dynamic prioritization, both removing false positives, but also dynamically prioritizing the efforts. Everything is done in infrastructure as code, so with Kubernetes, Docker, and everything. So the onboarding is really easy, and it's a bidirectional sync. So everything is done in Seculyze, is also done in Sentinel and forward. Before I hand over to Kristian, just one thing. So we started as a consultancy idea of moving into consulting into software. So you'll also see that through the software. So we like to recommend. The way we see recommendations is we have an attention. So what do we see? And we have an action. What should we do? Attention could be your alert rule is outdated. There's a new version, and the action could just be update. So that's how we work, and you'll see that throughout the presentation. But yeah, so that's the short-ish intro. But now I think we should dig into to the cases, Kristian, and we have the first case called Case A.
Yeah, I guess it's over to me then. So this case is a customer where basically they didn't have enough alert rules on Azure specifically. And they needed more MITRE coverage. And it wasn't only specifically on Azure, it was also some of their Linux environment, because they kind of needed to have more capabilities that were not in Microsoft. And I mean, if you go to Sentinel, then you have this like super long list of a lot of alert rules. You need to go through them. You can filter by, let's say, data connectors. But the problem is that then you don't know if you actually have the tables or if it actually is high value. So you're kind of, it's the same thing you're standing in front of. Like you're not really sure, well, how should I approach this? There's a catalog of, let's say, 5,000 alerts or alert templates. How do I go about doing this? And of course, I mean, it's for different tables and stuff like that. So they needed more detection and extra coverage that was not focused on Microsoft, or let's say that the products out of the box, the Defender products, what could they do to like extend that capability? So that's actually because they had an incident that started like this. So they knew that that was kind of one of their Achilles heels. Yeah. All right, let me start off by showing this first case here. Oh, that's the wrong one. Sec. There we go. Right. So I'll quickly intro the product and kind of how we approach it, because then the other cases will make more sense and tie together. So this is our dashboard, and what we have up here is our calibrate feature, which we have done recommendations for in 3 different categories, which is alert rules, log sources, and workspace configuration. Then we have like your key threats, and I'll dig into both the auto-tuning part, which is down here on the left, and kind of the prioritization risk-based approach. I mean, if I do like, let's say, I think it's 30 days, that should be fine. Then you have like your actual true positives that you need to look at. So what the fuck? SOC needs to focus on. And then here's the like auto close feature we have, which is the case 2 we're going to show, which is how we're actually auto closing stuff. And then we're not going to go and dig into the cost feature. We'll leave that as a teaser at the end. So the first thing I want to kind of show is how we value set things. So we like this attention and action that Alex talked about. And the way we do, for example, value setting of log sources is that we have the actual cost of the table, not the data connector, but the actual table, because they have different value settings. And then how much coverage can you actually enable with this specific table? And that in this case, there's also some management discretion. So if you, for example, look into this low value log sources enabled, then this is because you have this in another data table, specifically office activity. So there is some management discretion in that. Anyways, it was alert rules we were going to look at. So in terms of reducing noise, what we really want to focus on here is there is what we call good alert rules and bad alert rules, and we all know it. Like a really fun example that Alex came with was brute force. So you actually have like this one called fail login attempt to Azure portal. And those of you who've actually enabled this knows that it triggers a lot, because you have like these services that are requesting tokens all the time. So it actually, I think it has 5 or 10 counts of failed logins, and then it actually triggers like so many times. So you have a lot of other detections that can, you know, what do you call it, make up for this, that are a lot better, they're a lot more precise. And that's really what you want. So you want to remove the noise by, you know, disabling the bad alert rules, whatever you want to call it, and enabling the good ones. So another approach could, or another like a good alert rule could be, and this is actually fun because I had a customer that was compromised with this, that authentication method change for a privileged account. I know it has nothing to do with brute force, but basically what they did is that they could go in and then set their own MFA on that account, and then they could actually log on premise. So that could be a really good valued alert rule. But to come back to the whole brute force thing, then we do have other things like password spraying, brute forcing against specific services that we would recommend. But just to go back a little bit, what we've tried to do here is like a value-based approach. So all of the alert rules have, again, this cost gain value. And that's what we really want to focus on in alerting. Or doing like proper alert detections and things that Microsoft does are not necessarily have out of the box with their identity protection, what is it called, Defender for Cloud, etc. Defender for Identity, there's a lot of them, you guys know. So we really focus on having more signals, but like really proper good signals. Yeah.
So maybe we could also look into just one of them saying, you know, how do we do this high? Like if you take one of them, there's a high rating. How is that done?
Fair enough. So I mean, what we've done is then we have all these attentions here. So let me just do this here. So we have all these attentions, and then the idea would be that you can see that, you know, we've made some of them, and Microsoft has made some of them, and the community has made some of them. So the idea would be that you have, let's say, a low valued alert rule, high valued, high. So they're all high because it's like specific recommendations. And I know it's a little bit like it's not a value proposition we have, but in Sentinel you kind of have to click and then next. But in this case, you can just click them off, kind of see if I'm updating, enabling, disabling, and then you can see how much score I'm actually adding to my calibration score. So that's quite nice. And if you really wanted to dig in, then you can also open it. You can see how we're value setting it. You have a little comment field if you disable this for a specific reason, and then we actually also have a value explanation. So we're also kind of trying to guide the user if they're not specifically, let's say, a 100-meter master expert in Sentinel and detection engineering. Then we're kind of trying to help them and saying, okay, we're enabling this, let's say, in human language because of this, or we should enable this or disable this.
So the customer had these 5,000 alert rule templates that they had to choose from, right? And they got some help from this value setting, and the output was?
The output was,
Ta-da.
ta-da-da. Yeah, so they got 65% extra meter coverage. So a lot of alert rules. So and this is with disabling stuff and enabling other stuff. And of course, this was mostly focused on Azure and Linux, but we also had some, let's say, EDR evasion things, because at this stage, they didn't have on some parts of the infrastructure tamper protection enabled. So this kind of made up for a lot of stuff.
So you can see on the graph the gray, dark gray, that's sort of the before, and the added blue one, or bluish, that's after. So they do get a lot of coverage after that they didn't have before. But did they also get more alerts?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They did.
But did the SOC have to handle 65% more alerts?
Basically, yeah. I mean, to some degree. I mean, so the thing is that they had 65% extra coverage, but they also, in terms of like disabled alert rules. So of course they had more alert rules, but they had more precise alert rules, right? That's
exactly. Yeah. So I'm thinking, so the actual SOC analyst was actually getting the same amount of alerts, but since we're removing a lot of the noise, it was more precise alerts and actually more I say that high risk alerts, right? So not just false positive.
Yeah, I mean, we're also focusing a lot on, like, let's say, output that is a little bit easier to analyze. So it's also a part of that. It's easier to see the logs and what is going on, and say the correct entities and stuff like that.
So that's the first case. The next case is a little bit different, but rhymes a little bit with the same. Yeah.
So basically, this case is that they wanted to improve as it says, the operational efficiency of the SOC. So they used in Defender, and I don't know how many of you guys know, but in Defender you can kind of go and exclude alerts, meaning that you're not really getting the signal, but you're just excluding it, removing it, because every time it's this host and it's this user and it's this command line, and then it's not very, let's say, you can't necessarily go like a lot of layers deep. So you end up maybe excluding something that might be a potential incident, and that's really what you want, right? And then they're not really utilizing AI and ML, which is where we come in. So they kind of can have a little bit different approach to this tuning. So instead of saying like this specific VPN subnet and these users, we want to exclude those, or only the subnet, then we have to kind of maintain that for every alert detection or every product that we have. And that's really what we don't want to do. We want to have a more, let's say, holistic approach to it, and then being better at tuning out using machine learning. And then if they actually wanted to enable more, then I would say it would be hard for the team to handle if they wanted to just enable everything. And that's also one of the things that we really want to emphasize, is that we want to make sure that all of the recommendations that we have are enabled, so we kind of get all these signals that are super important for the, let's say, Sentinel and finding the attackers. Also, if you look at the kill chain, the more detections you have, the better, but the more resources you also have to use. But that's why we want to get better in actually filtering out using machine learning or tuning. Yeah. Cool. I'll jump into here. There we go. So the way we look at machine learning in Seculyze is that we look at these different alert rules or alertings, and then we kind of look at it as a funnel-based system. So that all of these alerts, they trickle through. And as Alex said, we have then some of them that are true positives that we need to look at, and then some of them that are false positives, and really want to like pin the needle on what do we actually need to focus on. So using cyber knowledge and ML, then we have, let's say, authentication attempt from a new country, where in this case we have classified 83% of these as false positive that came in like in all time, and 152 of these are then false positive incidents. And then the idea is that we then auto close these using our ML algorithm. So when it comes in, I'll just choose another one, just to not turn it off. You can kind of tag it in Sentinel, Then you can change the severity. You can run it for X days, because sometimes Microsoft machine learning algorithm can be a little bit, let's say, tedious if you, let's say, have a new branch office or buy a new company or something like that. And then you can apply it to future incidents or any currently open ones. So the idea is that, we have this funnel, and then we close the alerts that are then false positives. So you're retaining with the, let's say, undetermined and true positives. And if we go a step back to the last customer case, what we really want to do is to then make sure we have all the signals, so that we are better at filtering, because we can just auto close all of them and only retain the true positives or the undetermined ones. And then if you utilize Microsoft Sentinel quite a bit better, because you have like these multi-stage incidents, fusion incidents, and I mean, you want the alerts. You just only want the one that matters, right? So there might come 1,000 alerts, and then the one that is true positive, that's the one you want. And the more signals, of course, the better. But the problem is here that because we have this approach, then we can enable more alert rules. But in like let's say a classic setup where you wanted to statically tune out stuff, then I can see that being a little bit tedious. I mean, that's like why we built the product in that sense. And the great thing about this is that we have like it learns from how you actually want to work. So what do you think is a true positive and false positive? Of course, that's a barrier that we need to figure out as experts, right? Yeah. So the basic thing is that it was not a problem enabling more alert rules, because they could auto close in this way.
And so again, drum roll. What was the final value?
Yeah. So again, as we talked about, more signals, more rules, more signal correlation, and then being able to remove this with like ML and auto tuning setup. So and then I think this is such a nice story, because it then you're not too afraid if the new things comes in the content hub or new alert templates come, you can just enable them, and you're not afraid that I'm going to get overwhelmed by this alert or this many alerts. You'll just enable it, and then you can remove the noise by using ML.
So this was the first case that I talked about right in the beginning, so that they were able to automatically remove 80% of false positives automatically without them touching anything. So that's really neat. And as Kristian said, stay in just 2 seconds. I'll just finish off, and then you can answer the question or ask the question. I'll answer it or question. But we get more signals in. So when we see many clients, right, and they do this static removal. So they remove everything, so things don't come in. And so you don't get the data and you don't get the alerts in. But now with this automatically false positive tuning, you actually get the signals in. And these signals are really important, especially when we talk about these fusion alerts, right, Kristian?
Mm-hmm.
No.
I mean, so even let's say you start combining the different alerts, so you can see across like a user, across a host, a specific command line. I mean, those guys who work with Sentinel, you have like this graph where you can actually, I'm not saying it's the best graph in the world, but it is quite useful if you wanted to trace back. Then you can actually see that they're tying stuff together. So in this case, you know when there's an incident, and usually, let's say a real life incident, there's not only one alert. And the problem is really that it's sometimes when you have a low severity alert, which is like a static approach in a query-based system, not from the Microsoft portfolio, it might be a high severity. It might give an indicator of, okay, there's something wrong here. And I mean, the attackers are also looking at how we're using ML, which kind of alert rules are there, stuff like that. So, I mean, they also know, they're also trying to utilize that part of it.
Absolutely. So, Steen, you had a raised hand and a question.
Yeah, no, sorry. I just want to give you a thumbs up for the 80%.
Very nice. Cool. Thank you for the thumbs up. Very nice. Yeah, cool. I think also right around now, we often get the question, what if you categorize something wrong? That's the typical question we get right now, right? Yes, machine learning algorithms are not perfect. We do look at F1 scores, we do look at confusion matrix on a periodic basis, but things, they are classified incorrectly. But typically when we have this conversation, it's sort of set up as a null-sum game. So you're saying, yes, we don't want this because that doesn't work. Yes, but your current model also is risk-based. You have a lot of people that are looking into alerts. They also make mistakes, not by default, not because they're not doing a wonderful job, but because they're overloaded. They're burned out. They have too many things. So things happen. So it's a risk-based approach. You have to look at what is the least risky part here. And our argument is that a machine learning algorithm is probably better at looking at anomalies across large data sets better than humans, but humans are probably better at reacting, right?
Yeah, I mean, also because you then have, let's say, 65% more signals, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So now let's say that you guessed wrong 3% of the time, but you have 65% more signals and can actually auto close stuff. Then you're actually covered better and more automatic. In our opinion, of course.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Cool. That's case number 2. So case number 3, it's also a little bit different, but still rhymes a little bit with the same idea.
Yeah. See here. Yeah. So the last one was kind of let's say one single main analyst, let's call it that was looking into Sentinel, and he was sitting with this alone. And I mean, the story is that he was going to look at it once in a while, and then I think everybody knows it. He kind of looked, okay, I think this and this because of I know my infrastructure, I know my people, so I'll choose some that look dangerous. So he basically wanted full control of like his detection and response, and then he bought our product, which is, I mean, of course we love. But he kind of wanted this risk-based approach and maybe not looking into multiple interfaces, like overlapping interfaces. And this is one of the things he could do in us, also because he bought into the whole Microsoft portfolio, of course.
I think if I could just also comment just for 2 things, I remember the specific one thing he said that really kept me awake. It's like, we have this requirement due to this. I don't remember if it was NIST or it was 27,001 or whatever, but this standard, so we need a SIEM, so we have it. And so it was like over the corner, it's like, if something happens, we'll look into it. So it was like this post-mortem, so instead of using it proactively, they would be using it reactively, like, now we're hit, let's do something. That just hit me a lot.
Yeah, but I totally agree. I can remember that now when you say it. Anyways, I will go to show the last part here. So this is just to give a little bit of, let's say, insight to this. This is our incident overview. And what we've done here is we tried to emulate Sentinel's incident view so that the analyst doesn't need to learn a new interface, but can actually pretty easily look and see, okay, I understand these are like entities, there's logs, there's severity. What we've then added is, of course, this attention and action that we talked about. And how he likes to use it is that now we're classifying the alerts, so he can get an incident view where he in bulk can close false positives. And I'll go into a little bit more in a second how he actually prioritizes alerts, but I'll just show the first feature here, so that he can actually auto close these false positives that are classified as false positive, and then he can handle the rest. And what does that look like? So in this system, we don't have that many true positives, but we do have a couple. So the idea would be that you have a true positive that is detected, and then you could go to investigate in Sentinel and Defender. So he doesn't have to context switch that much. He can use one interface to then go to the tool that he likes, because we don't believe like it's Sentinel or Defender. We believe that it's both. But it adapts to his business context, as we talked about. Like, what does he classify as positive? And then he can go and look at that in the given system, but he could then out-close all of his false positives. And another thing that we talked about in terms of like prioritizing alerts is not only the true positive functionality, but it's also our threat intelligence system. So the way we've done it, and I think this is a real nice way of doing it, is that we don't rely on only one threat intelligence feed. we kind of look at the feed and say, what is the quality of that threat intelligence feed? We then weight it and score it, and then we kind of take all our IOCs out of the alerts and incidents, and then we score it based on all of the feeds. How much can we actually trust it? How old is in threat intelligence data? I mean, you guys all know that, not necessarily all know, but okay, so the saying is that in threat intelligence, intel becomes very stale very quickly. So that's a really big part of it. A good example is, let's say, Emotet can change IPs every day. So something that was malicious yesterday doesn't have to be today. Yeah. So the threat intelligence in terms of like attention and action, we have threat intelligence. We also have medium and high. We have true positives, and then we have all our false positives that we can then close. So we can then go in once a day, close this, and then analyze the rest of them of the true positives. So it kind of becomes easier for him to handle this, and he sleeps well at night. Yeah.
Very cool. So let me just change back to the two slides. Let's see. There we go. So what do we get out of it?
Yeah, less tools, bro. He can basically use one tool for everything at the moment. I mean, of course, he needs to pivot through the specific, like Sentinel or Defender, if he wants to analyze the true positives. But at least he can remove all the noise, and then he sleeps well at night because he uses us. Because he ended up getting you can actually the story from the beginning. He ended up getting better coverage and full visibility, removing false positive and having the true positives left. So he's in control. He can see everything we close underneath, and he sleeps well at night. So he's happy, and that makes us happy.
That makes us a lot of happy. Yeah. So I also, especially which is your last comment, Kristian, I like a lot, which I also remember. That's not something that we said. That's something that he said. I sleep better at night.
Yeah.
I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah, so I mean, if we can take it from customer case A to C, then it's like better detection, enabling good and bad signals. Keeping the signal correlation so that we make use of Sentinel and actually catch the attacker. Having the auto-tune approach, so we're not afraid to enable anymore, but can actually now do it because of tuning. And then don't having to pivot to so many different portals, but at least can have one main place to let's say pivot from. And then, staying in control and sleeping well at night, as the last slide says. Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. So the thing is about, I'm sure many of you also work in the cyber area. The issue with these things is that sometimes you want to be a little bit, I wouldn't say covert, but you don't necessarily tell everything. So we had to anonymize these cases. We were not allowed to tell who they are, but we can show one of our other customers, which we didn't want to show the case and the same customer at the same time. But we have Co-op as a customer, which doesn't have the exact same things, but they have like part of it, so you could say it's a multitude. But we just chose these three because they're very direct and very unique in its way. So it's a more clear, story.
Yeah, also maybe shows like how they utilized our tool in a great way.
Yeah. Alrighty, so that's sort of ending the story that we would like to tell. So before we're ending up, we would just like to open the floor for questions. So if you have any, just lean out, say it, and if nobody has questions, you know what happens. We do have a dad joke battle, and I'll start off. That's not true, but so if you have any questions, please just say something. What do you call a blind deer with no legs? Reference the start. Still no idea. Yeah. Alrighty. Cool. I'm guessing no questions, and if you have any questions, you're always welcome to reach out.
Yeah.
So just summing up today, I think Kristian did a wonderful sum up. I'm not going to do anything better than that. That is not possible. But just saying that we have sort of two key main roads that we're looking into. One is called fighting alert fatigue, which is sort of, we could maybe call it optimizing on time. This is something about precision alerting. It's something about reducing alert response time, something about reducing the burnout. That's sort of one item that we've been focusing on today. I hope you liked it and I found it interesting. We also have another item called reducing license cost, optimizing license investment. So like this, for all our customers, we see a reduction in Microsoft spend at least 10%. I think the one that did the best does 24 to 25% of their license costs are removed. We will also do a webinar on that. We'll have that after the summer vacation at some point in time. So I hope you'll keep in touch and look at our web or LinkedIn and follow that, and we'll post the timing there if that's something that you also think are cool. So that's it. I just like to end up saying, if you want to move on, if you want to have a further discussion, or maybe if we should look into whether you can get the same out of Seculyze for your Sentinel installation, you're very welcome to reach out to me or Kristian, or just go into our webpage and request a demo. The link is in the bottom of this page. But you'll also find the webpage, of course, on the top right hand and the bottom, or on the bottom. Yeah. So I think that's it. I'd just like to thank you for attending. It has been wonderful to see you all. Also some new faces, but also some faces I've seen before. So yeah, thank you for joining, and wish you a wonderful Thursday, and speak to you soon.
Yeah, thanks so much, guys. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.